Hello traders, and welcome to this week's Mastering the Market session with me, Matt. I am a senior analyst at PrimeXBT. If you have not met me in the past, welcome to today's stream. I'm super excited to be here with you guys. We're going to deep dive into a bit of the fundamentals as well as the technical side of things. So let's kick it off by going over some fundamentals. So last week we didn't actually have too much coming out in terms of economics from a fundamental standpoint. However, we did have some ECB rate decisions that came out as expected, and as mentioned, we did cut interest rates by 0.25% in the Eurozone. So that's been quite cool to see. We obviously also then had Great Britain inflation data results come out a little bit lower than expected. So across the Eurozone as well as Great Britain, we're starting to see things kind of cool off a bit more. We're seeing inflation continue its downward spiral there. We're also seeing interest rates cutting. So it's going to be quite an interesting couple of weeks ahead. We've obviously coming into the last quarter now. There's not really much more time for the rest of the year now for sort of monetary decisions to be made. Pretty much everything is kind of steadfast, and we obviously got the Fed having another 2 meetings by the end of this year. So that's going to be also really interesting to see what they do, if they continue to be aggressive in the way in which they cut interest rates, or if they go with a more conservative approach, right? So we already know that they're looking to cut by 1%. They've already cut by 0.5. So there's only room really for another 0.25 and another 0.25, or they go really aggressive again at 0.05. I don't really suspect that will happen, considering inflation went up slightly than sort of what happened in the previous months. So it's going to be quite interesting to see what happens. I wrote a really interesting article that I'm going to share with you guys after this too. More about what's kind of happening in the greater landscape of things. Obviously, we've got elections coming up almost about 2 weeks from now on the 4th of November. So that's going to be, I think, why we're also seeing quite a lot of volatility within our risk assets currently. We're seeing gold continue to trade into new all-time highs. We're seeing the likes of Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, starting to pick up its feet a bit more. We're also seeing things like NASDAQ and the S&P 500 also trading into new all-time highs. NASDAQ is a bit more on the laggy side of things. It hasn't really got to that point yet. However, the S&P 500 is very much in full force at new all-time highs as well. So there's a lot of interesting data points coming out. The one thing we need to keep in mind is GDP, especially for the US. Now, if we are starting to kind of see zero sort of growth in the US economy, that kind of results in a potential stagflation environment where we kind of are having interest rates being cut, inflation semi going up, and zero growth within the economy. So keep your eyes out on that. It's going to be quite an interesting point. We've got that coming out, I think, in October, the end of this month. So that should be quite interesting to see. For the rest of this week, there isn't actually really too much that is going to be quite hot off the press in terms of fundamentals. However, we do have some flash PMI data that's coming out for both the Eurozone, Great British pound, as well as the US dollar. So keep your eyes out on that. That's coming out tomorrow. I suspect there might be a bit of volatility in the market thereafter. So that's pretty much it from, say, a fundamental standpoint. Let's head over maybe a little bit more into the technical side of things, see if we can find any potential opportunity to trade. I've got my eyes on a couple of things that I want to show you guys. If you guys have not already gone through our market research tab, I will maybe just go back one page. If you have a look here, we under our learn and research, we have a lot of market research that I'm extensively putting together along with the rest of my team. We have obviously got a mixture of technical analysis as well as price prediction research as well as fundamental research. So if you have not already gone and checked this out, feel free to go and have a look at it. There's obviously a lot of useful information already being stored over here. You can filter by your asset type depending on what you would like. So for example, if you'd only like to see cryptocurrency articles, you can do so by doing that. You'll see all the recent daily articles published here. Then you'll also be able to filter between global markets, and you'll kind of be able to see the same sort of thing, right? So this is where I do in-depth analysis, especially from a technical analysis point of view, showing you potential areas of interest, as well as what is potentially happening, and kind of deep diving a bit more into the technical side of things. that is really good to tie in with, say, the fundamental research side of things, where we've got a lot of in-depth research being shared daily. And that's pretty much in a nutshell what's happening over here. So if you head over to our Learn and Research tab, you can find that over here. We also have some educational articles as well as market news, etc. So you guys may have already seen some of my posts on the likes of, say, Bitcoin, as well as gold, the S&P 500, especially euro dollar. Actually, if I'm looking at the dollar now, we've actually been on quite a tear. So if I just pop up the dollar index right now, so for maybe some of you that don't know what the dollar index is, but basically the dollar index is a composite or basket of funds, specifically with regards to the euro dollar, where there is various weightings. Now the dollar index kind of tells us more or less what the dollar is going to do. So you will trade a lot of pairs that are denominated against the dollar. So following the dollar index is quite a key thing to look at when doing technical analysis and when understanding trading, because it obviously allows you to kind of deep dive further into the technicals and understand where the dollar might be going. So for example, if you have a look here, the dollar has been on quite a run over the last sort of week or so. If we have a look at these sort of weekly candles, we can continue to see these pushes going higher. I actually read an article earlier today that said that the dollar index strength that has been over the last consecutive 14 days has pretty much been the longest since 1980. So we are on quite a tear at the moment. I think we haven't really had much of a downward day over the, say, pretty much since last month around the 25th or the 26th of September. So it's been almost about a month of just upward price action for the dollar. So you'll see the likes of, say, euro dollar, pound dollar, etc. really falling off a cliff. So if I show you over here, euro dollar, you can kind of see how we are pretty much trading into new lows at the moment, around 1.077. So I actually mentioned this a few weeks back on our stream. This was a potential short that I was interested in. I'm not sure if you guys were a part of that stream, but feel free to go back in the link and have a look through it. But basically, I was looking at two things, right? One, we had this rejection area over here. We kind of saw a double top, if you want to call it that, at around 1.12. We then saw price action kind of break through this daily 50 EMA here. We failed to hold support over here. And these were the kind of areas I was looking, especially once we broke out of this trend line here, for some sort of continuation back down to the downside. So this was a trade that I was looking at, and you can pretty much use something similar in your trading plan, where you either are in favor, say, with the trend line, or if you are wanting to, say, trade these sort of breaks and continuations to the opposite side, right? I think a lot of people were kind of anticipating a bit more of a bigger pullback, say, into areas up here before rolling over again. That would have formed this nice sort of head and shoulders pattern as well. However, we've just kind of seen straight free fall from pretty much the highs of 1.12. Now we are temporarily in this internal support zone here. However, I do somewhat agree and believe that if we fail to hold there, that we're probably going to trade back down lower into, say, 1.07 flat. We then also have some further support down here at around 1.06. So those would be those kind of areas of interest that I'd be looking at on, say, euro dollar. Now, I'm personally quite eager in seeing some sort of pullback, especially considering that we've just been on an absolute downward spiral over the last month. There needs to be some sort of relief rally of sorts. So if that is the case and we start to pull back, you can kind of see here also on the RSI indicator that we are starting to breach that 30% level, suggesting that maybe price is oversold to some degree. I never really use the RSI indicator purely to take a setup. I use it mainly as a confluence. I kind of tie it into different areas of interest that I'm looking at. So for example here, you know, if price did, say, start to retrace back into the highs, you know, then stuff like your premium and discount tool, as well as your Fibonacci tool, they really are helpful to kind of build sort of price forecasting. And if you have a look here, for example, if I had to measure this out, right, and we started to see price kind of pulling back, I wouldn't be surprised if we would go into this 1.10 region again, which is also quite a key psychological level, right? So those are my thoughts on euro dollar at the moment. I'm actually not really too interested in trading this pair as of right now. I rather want to sit back and kind of let it show me its hands before kind of jumping into any trades. But I thought just to go over this price action, as this was something we did mention on the streams previously, especially considering once we had broken out of this small internal ascending trend line here, that was going to be pretty much a free fall right to new lows. So now it's just a case of where do we think price is going to find some sort of support, and where do we start seeing price kind of reject back into those regions before looking for further short continuation, right? So I like to trade with the trend. So right now for me, shorts would be of course of interest. However, I am expecting some sort of a pullback at some stage, and I would rather wait for something like that rather than climbing in now and potentially getting caught in the sort of pullback environment, right? So that's euro dollar. If we quickly flip over into gold, I actually have written a nice article on this today. I'll post it as well. You can see that we've pretty much got into new all-time highs again as well, trading at around $2,750. You can see here that we actually are holding up quite nicely on this internal ascending trend line here as well. We had pretty much 1, 2, 3 bounces, and now it's kind of traded into new all-time highs. And we are starting to see, that's why I said to you, I don't really trade purely off the RSI indicator showing me sort of areas where price may be oversold or overbought, especially considering if you look at the price of gold right now, we have been on an absolute tear. So, you know, when we start to see levels breaching like this over here, I wouldn't necessarily say that it is do or and be or that we're going to see some sort of massive reversal from there. I mean, we did have some minor reversal, right? And if I had to just draw this leg out here, it was pretty much dropping into our 50%, right? If I just get this up, you can pretty much see we just retrace into 50% of this Fibonacci tool, and then we continue to trade higher, right? So I would suspect that if there is areas where we start to pull back, right, we've got this newly formed support area that's sitting at around $2,685. So if I had to just zoom in a bit here, right, and if I was looking to potentially go in for some longs, I would be pretty much looking to buy up anything where we get sort of 50% discounted ranges, and then we continue to the upside again, right? So if I had to mark out this on gold, it would look something like this if this was our high. And if you have a look here now, this actually ties in quite nicely. So if you look at these confluences over here, right? So let's say that the high was indeed $2,758 on gold then, and this was some sort of pullback we were seeing now. I wouldn't be surprised if we would pull back into regions like this, and we would look for potential longs back into the new highs, right? Why would I be interested in something like that? Well, one, I'm looking for pretty much risk assets to be purchased up at the moment, especially considering the political and economic environment that we are trading in right now. So obviously risk assets do seem to be having a lot more attention around them. That's why I will also go over Bitcoin after this too. So if I was to look for some gold buys here, my idea would be to wait for something in this 50% region that would then constitute some sort of discounted rebalancing for me. And this kind of ties in with this nice resistance, which would now turn into support area 2. Okay, that kind of lines up with this internal trend line that I've got marked out here. Let's say, for example, I actually wanted to pull it out a bit more and I have it marked out something like that. Then you would pretty much see your regions looking something like this, right? So you've got a number of things, right? You've got the RSI potentially showing you that price is being overbought in this area. So we might be on the brink of some sort of pullback. Okay, if we do pull back, how far are we going to pull back by? Well, it's pretty simple, right? That's when I use my fractal indicator. It's giving me the most recent highs and lows. So you can see here that this was the most recent low that then pushed into this new high over here. So I would then want to form a bias where I was looking for some sort of continuation trade, right? Where if you pretty much look at it like this, I can get this marked out, it would basically look something like this. So you are pretty much trading with the trend, and you're just wanting to kind of catch an entry on the next low. Okay, so that's pretty much in a nutshell how I would look to trade gold in this scenario right now. If I had to look for some sort of buy entries, it would be something around here. I would then have my stops below here, and then I would like to target, say, some new highs. Okay, now there's a couple of ways you can do this. You can either set a limit entry, so you could pretty much have this PND tool set out like this, which is just a Fibonacci tool. It's nothing fancy. Okay, and if price started to pull back into this region, I would then either look for one or two things. I can look for some sort of confirmation entry, or I can take a risk entry, right? So if I wanted to do a risk entry in this scenario like this, what I would do is I would then head over to my terminal. So as you know, most of my funding is sitting on the PrimeXBT terminal. If you have not already gone through my tutorials where I show you how to trade various assets, you can go do so on our YouTube page. We have a playlist where I show you how to trade on both the futures platform as well as our CFDs platform, right? So for today's example, let's say I was trading on our CFDs platform. We would need to make sure that there's necessary funding sitting in that account. So how do I do that? One, I would obviously need to make a deposit into my account, which I've obviously got a bit of funding in here to show you already. Then your funding will sit in this wallet account like this. And if I want to then trade in the specific platform, so say for example the CFDs platform, I would need to then transfer it out, right? So if you have a look here, I would just simply go transfer, and let's say I want to choose my USD Tether address wallet where I want the funding to come from. Then I will select the funding, the area in which I want the funding to go to. So obviously gold is a commodity, it's not a crypto, so I'm not going to be trading gold within the crypto futures side of things. However, I will be trading it in the CFDs trading platform. So let's just do a little test here to show you. I'll say I'll transfer $100. It then says transfer complete. If I go click on my CFD trading platform now, the funding should be sitting in this account. Okay, and if you look over here, you'll have a section that says balance, equity, unrealized P&L, etc. So in this scenario, right, my funding would have then been transferred into this account. I then have sufficient balance to then make trades, so I can then head over into the actual terminal itself and look for some potential execution ideas, right? So if I'm wanting to look for gold, which is obviously a commodity, it'll be under the heading CFD, right? This is where we've got both commodities and indices sitting. If you have a look over here now, you can pretty much see gold is there sitting over here. Okay, so how would I want to do this, right? So if I flick back onto my terminal account, you can see that I would want some sort of buy entry at around, let's call it 268250, right? Now remember, this is not a market entry. I don't want to actually buy right now. I want to buy when we rebalance. Okay, so how do I do that? It's quite simple. Here you've got two options. Okay, so make sure you've selected gold as your ticker, because you don't want to necessarily be executing a trade idea on a different asset pair. So let's say I want to buy up 5 contracts worth of gold. I will then go and select this. Okay, it'll then pop up a new order widget, and if you have a look here, you can move it around. It's pretty easy to use. So then again, make sure the ticker, the symbol name is what you're wanting to trade. Then where it says order type, you've got a couple of options. You can do market order, limit order, stop order, whatever it may be. So for today's example, I want to do a limit order. Why is that? Now the reason why is because price is actually trading above where I would like to enter. Okay, so similar to how I was telling you guys last week how to use market stop orders, stuff like that. This is a different scenario. This is actually showing you if price is trading above the area that you're looking for right now, how do I get an entry back lower? So how I would do that is I would set a limit entry, and let's say I want the price at around, I'm getting the price pretty much from my trading view charts over here. It'll tell you, so I've got 2682.5. So I would then have a limit entry here, 2682.5. Okay, and now remember, I can't sell at that limit. I want to buy. Okay, and then I will simply send the order. Okay, it will now then show me my order. If you have a look over here, you can't see right now because my face is there, but you'll see it's got two things, right? You've got orders, it will tell you the symbol, the amount of contracts that you're wanting to purchase, and the price in which it is currently trading at, right? So for example, if I want to now get rid of this one, let me just confirm here. I'll go back in here and I'll make sure it was correct by 268. Yeah. So if I want to go put this limit back in, I'll go do something like this. 2, 6, 2, 5. Right, so it'll look something like that. And then I'll go send through the order, confirm. Okay, now you'll have a look over here. So if I zoom back in, you can pretty much see now there's my order sitting there, right? So I'm not sure if you guys can see that well, but if you have a look over here, you can see there's a faint green line that is running through the middle of this page. Okay, now that will line up exactly with the figure that I chose from the trading view chart, and that will have my order. Okay, so let's say for example I now wanted to put in some protection orders. Remember, your protection orders are really useful in scenarios like this, especially if price wicks down into that area really quickly, because sometimes you might not be able to market execute quick enough when price just kind of whipshaws into an area and out. Okay, so the same can be said. I don't necessarily want to leave this position open without any protection orders, right? Because one of two things can happen. Price can come in, it can trigger my order, which means I then get tagged into the entry. Okay, and if I then say to myself, oh, I will just then place the protection orders the next day when I see price has now executed this position, I run two risks, right? The first risk is that I run myself into a drawdown that I cannot get out of. Okay, basically what does that mean? So let's say for example price goes like this. Okay, it tags me in and it just continues to trade lower, right? And maybe for some reason, let's say you are busy, you are doing other things and you can't actually monitor the charts, or maybe you're sleeping. You don't necessarily want to wake up the next day or get back from whatever you're doing, and now all of a sudden your entry is down, say, half of your account because you didn't have any protection orders in place, right? So I like to use protection orders to protect me against adverse movement. So right now my idea is to be more pro trend. It's to be more in favor with market trends. So I would like to buy in a discounted region. Once price comes into that discounted region, I would then like to let price continue to the upside. However, if price decides to continue trading to the low side, I want to be protected. Okay, so how do I do that? It's really simple. If you click over here, you double click on it, right? It will pop up the limit entry that you've already got set. So you can either modify the entry, you can make it higher, you can make it lower. You can do that by simply just dragging and dropping this, right? So every time you drop it, it'll ask you, do you want to modify this? You can say edit and replace, sure. For this example, I'm going to say cancel. If I click back on here now, right? Do you see where it says my margin impact? It says 29 USD. Okay, underneath there it says place stop loss and take profit. Okay, that is a really key point. So if you click on that little box, it will then pop up your protection orders. Okay, now the protection orders are your stop loss as well as your take profit. So how do I now enter my stop loss? Really simple. I go back to my chart that I'm interested in. So let's say for example my stop out would be below this low at around $2,600. I go back into the terminal, I click over here, I then can go and modify this. And now you'll see all of a sudden it's popped up my stop loss. Okay, so I go edit and replace, I go confirm. And now if I want to see that entry or that limit, you can do it one of two ways. You can click back on the order section, you'll see that your stop loss is now in place, or you can click on it directly and then the red line will show up. So now you've got your orange line pretty much showing you your actual limit order, You've got your red line showing you your stop loss order. And that's pretty much how you can protect yourself against, say, a big move to the downside, okay? If you don't know how much you're going to get stopped out for, you can click on it. It will then tell you projected loss will be $400, okay? Let's say, for example, I don't want to lose $400. That's too much for me. How do I change that? It's really simple. Now I go back to the amount section. So where it says gold USD, it says amount. It's got 5 lots currently. Let's say I want to only risk half of that. So then I can go simply change that, okay? Now, if I go modify, it will now say, cool, I'm only going to enter into 2.5 lot contract. And if I have a look over here, my stop loss will be the same. If I want to make it a little bit higher, I can do so. And now if you have a look, it will say your projected loss has now changed from $400 to $200. So that's an easy way to calculate the risk, okay? I never really risk more than 1% of my account. So for example, if I've got, say, $6,500 sitting in this account, 1% of that would be $65. So I would want to maybe bring this down even further. So let's say I just want to do one contract. Okay, that's giving me about $80. So there we go. Let's say I do 0.8. Now it says, cool, $65 will be my projected loss if price now comes in here and hits my entry limit, okay? So that's a really simple way to quickly just calculate how much risk you want to put on the table. You can enter your limit entries like this, and you can obviously modify your stop loss really simply. I really do like the CFD platform. It's really easy to use. And let's say, for example, you wanted to now enter a take profit level. So let's say I'm trading a 2-to-1. So what does that mean? Basically, I'm risking $60 in order to make, say, $120, right? That would basically be 60 times 2 gives me 120. That would be a 2-to-1 for me. So how do I work that out? You can do one of two ways. You can either go back onto your trading view chart, right? If you have a look over here, you can drag and drop your, so this is a long position size tool. So in order for you to bring this up, maybe I'll go one step back. On the left hand side, it will give you a little forecasting tool. Then you've got your projection, and there you can choose either long or short. So if you want to have it in your favorites bar, so like I have my favorite bar over here, I pretty much just click the little star next to it and it'll bring it up for me. So for example, let's say I want to add that in. Now all of a sudden you'll see over here, it's now added in. So let's say I want to add in a highlighter. There we go, boom, it's over there. So you can simply just click on this little star. It will tell you what is being added to your toolbar and what is being removed. So that's how I get my long position size tool. So if you want to, say, target a 2-to-1, I can use this tool right here. It's quite easy to use. And if you have a look now, pretty much this is telling me my stop loss level over here. There is a number that says 2. Okay, that's basically 2-to-1, right? And if I change this, so if you have a look here, you can pretty much see, I don't know if you can see it that well. Maybe I'll just quickly change it here. And I'll make my text white. Let's have a look. Text, let's make it white. So now you can pretty much see that number 1.65. So that will change every time. So it's basically the same as using like a limit order entry or whatever it may be. It's super easy to use. I use this purely to just calculate my risk. So here, my 2-to-1 would be around $2,842. It tells me in the top right-hand corner over here. So now I can head back into my terminal. I can then type in the amount that I'm looking for, 28262. So let's just say, wait, I'm changing the wrong thing. Sorry. Let me click back on here. Yeah, where it says take profit, right? So now I can go change over here where it says 2862. Okay, and this is maybe a bit high. Let's just say I want to bring it down a bit, something like that. Okay, now you'll see that my take profit and my risk to reward are perfectly aligned. So I go confirm. Okay, and if I want to go and view that now, you can just drag on the corner so you might not be able to see it now, but if you drag the numbers next to the right hand side of the terminal chart, that will pretty much allow you to zoom in and out. Okay, so let's say I'll drag it a bit more, you can see, and if I click over here now, pretty much it will tell me, right, two things. If price comes down lower into $2,682, which is what I wanted to look for buys, I will get tagged in a buy entry. Okay, if price continues to trade against me, my stop out level is going to be around $2,603. Okay, that's my protection order. If that happens, I'm going to lose $60. I'm fine with that. I've got $6,000 in my account. That's 1% risk. I'm happy to risk 1% on this trade. Perfectly fine. Okay, if price then moves in my favor and in my direction, okay, it will then take me to a level of around 2,850. Okay, that means when price gets to 2,850, you'll automatically be closed out the position. And what will your position profit be? That's how you go over here, where it will pretty much tell you, okay, projected loss $63, projected profit $134. Perfectly fine. I'm happy with that. I will leave that as is. Now, that's pretty much how I would go about entering into a position on gold. Okay, the same can be said for any other asset that you're looking for. If you're wanting to do a market sort of buy order or a market sort of sell order, or if you want to do limit orders, stop orders, or whatever it may be, it's the same thing over and over again. So it's really easy to use. I've got a lot of tutorials showing you how to do this as well. So feel free to go and have a look at that. If there's any comments or questions that you might have within the actual terminal itself, feel free to ask them now. Or you can also personally just message me on the YouTube channel where those videos are sitting, the tutorials, because I'll be able to also explain a bit more in our next session, or I can also just reply back to you on the YouTube channel itself. So that's pretty much my idea that I would be looking for right now on gold. I also just wanted to do some more sort of analysis, breaking down the price of Bitcoin. I don't necessarily want to look for any positions on this right now. However, something similar to what gold is maybe showing us that I kind of wanted to go over. So there's two things that are happening here. Okay, we are kind of still very much stuck in this range. The range obviously being from this high over here, which is at around $73,000. Now we know that that was our all-time high. Okay, and I think pretty much everyone is under the impression that we are going to push higher. However, we do have a lot of hurdles to get through before we do that, and I kind of actually like this build up, to be honest. I like the build up of all of these highs over here, as I'm kind of seeing that more as just inducement. So I'm seeing this more of like a magnet towards the new highs, if that makes sense. So I'm expecting these highs to get taken out, and I would want to reevaluate price once we kind of get to these new highs, because one of two things are obviously going to happen when we get there. We either push through into new highs, or we reject those highs pretty heavily, and then we potentially get stuck back in this range again, and then we look to trade higher again too. So if I had to just quickly mark out the range, you pretty much have your range looking like that. You can kind of have a, I show you just something like that, you can pretty much see now all of these areas underlying that sort of range, which was around $60,000, you want to call it that. You can pretty much just see how we have respected these areas quite well, quite a number of times now actually. So if I show you this area here, we have popped our head under there once, okay, and pretty much 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. So I'm looking now for price to kind of push higher. I do like these highs over here. So what we need to be careful for, and what we need to be on the lookout for, is pretty much when we get to these highs at around $73,000, we need to be careful of the same thing happening on the inverse, right? So something looking like that. That's what we got to be careful for, okay? I do, however, think that there is enough momentum for price to get there. I am just really curious to see how these sort of support resistance areas kind of react. So if you have a look here, you've got areas that have been pretty much rejected and respected quite well in the past. So if I had to draw it out like this, right, I'd be quite curious to see now how we are going to react when we get to these levels, because we can do one of two things. We're either going to blow straight through and make a new high, wherever that is, I'm not sure, because obviously price, especially what we're seeing now across the board from risk assets, we're seeing once we kind of break through into these new all-time highs, there isn't really much sort of pullbacks or like areas to get back in. It just kind of pushes higher. So I'd be quite curious to see how this resistance area is going to hold now. That's why I'm not really too keen on actually actively executing any positions on this right now, because I want to see price make a new high and kind of show us what it wants to do before jumping in. So these would be my two areas of interest going on the way up, right? We've obviously then got, say, this ascending trend line that kind of is a bit far out in my opinion. So we've got two other sections that I want to be on the lookout for, right? One being, if we really start to dip our toes back into new lows, I would suggest that maybe around $54,000 would be like the most extreme area, okay? I think if we do dip our toes back down, we're going to be looking at areas around, say, $60,000, okay? The reason I'm saying that is because we've kind of respected these areas quite nicely. However, we're still failing to get out of this range, and that is like my biggest concern at this moment in time. So if you look at this leg over here, right, you can pretty much see that we have been stuck in this price range since about the 29th of July. We haven't done anything. We haven't broken this low, which is sitting at around 49,000, okay? We haven't broken this high. So it's been almost 3 months of consolidation sitting in this area right now. That's why I'm thinking to myself, I don't really want to participate right now. I rather want to wait for some further confirmation. So one thing that would be potentially of interest, okay, is if we're looking at, say, these breaks. So you can see here, you got your break here. You've got a break over here. You've got another break over here. And that's pretty much, these are the breaks that we're experiencing to the upside now. So it kind of looks similar to gold. If you look at gold, right, you've made this new high, so to say, and you're looking for price to potentially rebalance and then continue into new highs, okay? So if I had to map out BTC, I would almost be of the opinion that we're going to do something similar, right? That's why I'm quite curious to see how we react when we're in these levels over here. Because if you look now, let me just draw this out again. Okay, so these would be my areas of interest. So if we start to pull back, what areas would I be looking for? Okay, something within this discounted range over here. So let's say at around the 50% level of this, which is about $64,191. That's pretty much, if we start to dip our toes and we kind of fail to hold as support in this resistance area that we've broken through now, I wouldn't be surprised if we kind of go into this level before trading higher. Hence why you could potentially have some sort of long bias or long limits setting down here, okay? And that basically would mean that if we do pop down in here, we've got to really see some momentum back to the upside. So for me, I would rather wait for something to kind of show us our hands. So if you have a look here, I would like to see how price kind of reacts down here. And if we can maybe get some sort of confirmation entry model, something like that, then we continue to the highs. That's pretty much what I would look at right now on BTC. We're kind of stuck still in the middle of no man's land. And that is why I'm interested to see if we do drop maybe into these lower areas at around, say, $64,000. You got this nice daily EMA to also kind of hold a support. You've got this trend line that's coming from here. That's why I say this looks very similar to gold, because gold is looking very much the same. Okay, if you have a look again, where is gold? I'll bring it up for you now. It's looked very much the same. You've got ascending trend line, you've got pretty much resistance area over here that is now kind of acting as support. The only difference between Bitcoin and gold right now is that if you look at gold, gold is just continuing to make new highs. Okay, so we've pushed through this major resistance area that Bitcoin is in. All right, so we kind of saw these areas of consolidation down here, right? They were broken way back in July, where we've been stuck in this range since July. That's why these kind of pro trend moves, so if you have a look at, if I flick back to gold one more time, something like this, okay, I would be in more favor of, because I'm actually following the trend and I'm playing with the correct bias. But if I look at something like Bitcoin right now, okay, I'm still playing within the range. We haven't broken out of these highs. That's why I wouldn't be too interested in this play right now unless I see some sort of confirmation entry model, or, you know, a double confirmation entry. Even so, just really waiting to show us its hands, because once we start breaking into these new ranges or new areas, then we can easily look for quick rebalance, go. That's the beauty about trading BTC when it does start to push into those new areas of interest and new price discovery ranges, because you will get those days where it is pushing through and rebalancing, then pushing through, rebalancing, pushing through. So that's pretty much in a nutshell what I'm looking for. I don't really want to play any of these internal ranges right now, purely because I'd rather just wait for price to show me what it wants to do and then climb on to the back of the momentum following it, right? So that is pretty much in a nutshell what I would be looking to kind of trade right now. And if you have a look again at BTC on this angle, you can also see how we've broken out of this minor internal descending trend line too. So that kind of also ties in with this support area now. So if I have a look at that over here, I wouldn't be surprised if we had to dip our toes back down into this region. There's enough confluences down here to kind of potentially hold a support, and then we continue into new highs. So that's kind of my thoughts on Bitcoin right now. Sorry, it's quite a rough sort of analysis, quick on the go, but I thought to show you these areas. Maybe you're looking at something similar. Maybe this is something that you're also interested in. Feel free to ask any questions that you may have, pop them in the chat, and I will get back to them as soon as I can, or we can deep dive into them further in the next stream. So thanks again for joining me on this weekly Mastering the Market session with me, Matt. I really enjoy these sessions with you guys. I hope there are a lot of value to you. I hope we can really start to see some price action kicking in our favor again. Obviously, there's a lot of uncertainty still happening with the elections around the corner. I do think once things like that are out the way and we start to see some sort of price stability, that we can kind of get back into a bit more of a fluid trading motion. And I think that will also definitely pick up with the cycle times, etc. So thanks again for joining me on this week's Mastering the Markets with me, Matt session. I really enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys in next week's.